Okay, welcome to the Launch Goal podcast. Today we have Ben, Gabe, and Arthur. They first showed up in season 2 of our podcast, I think in March, towards the end of March 2020, when they were still in core. And now they finished Capstone and are all employed. And we're just doing a reunion episode. So, hey guys, thanks for stopping by.
Getting the band back together.
Good to be here.
So last time we talked, it was beginning of the pandemic and sort of the world was turning upside down. But you guys were still in core. You guys were in Launch School core, not even Capstone. And you had this really unique process of working through core together, which is something that I think up until that point, I hadn't seen too much of. So therefore, we just decided to record an episode together on the podcast. And it was really well received. I think a lot of people derived a lot of inspiration out of it in terms of trying to find community with what we have at Launch School. Yeah, just give us an update on where you are now. What was it like finishing core? What was it like working on Capstone together on a team? And where are you now in terms of your careers?
Hey, this is Ben. I could take that first one. Finishing core would have been impossible without these guys, especially for me. I was the one dragging. I was the one that needed to rush to get done. And so it was all of these guys' support and making sure that my sort of lane was clear. And if I had issues that I had them to go to help me get done in a timely fashion to make the Capstone deadline, because we definitely needed to do it as a team. So that was huge, having these guys together for that. And then when it got to Capstone, the fact that we were already a solid team that worked well together was immediately apparent. Capstone was so much smoother for us. I certainly don't want to speak for people that came into Capstone not on a team, but I was so thankful to have this camaraderie already put in place so that I could spend all of our time focusing on learning. And Capstone, you talk about early in Capstone how, especially when it comes to the systems design work, strong opinions are necessary. And vetting strong opinions through blunt, honest conversation is sort of how we grow and learn to develop our own coding style and really deepen our knowledge. And so the ability to trust and love these guys while we were going through that immediately, I think paid off in spades for us.
Ben touched upon a really important point that Chris also brings up all the time during specifically the start of Capstone, which is trust, and how hard it is for new teams to trust each other. Whereas when we came in as a group, like there was none of that. Like we didn't have to spend a second thinking about that. Like I knew if Arthur wanted to do something or Ben wanted to do something else, like I didn't have to worry about it for a split second. And it was so comforting to know that. And yeah, the whole process was, finishing core and getting to Capstone was really, really fun. Like we spent more time on a video chat than we spent out of it. Like it was absolutely
facts.
If we logged, we probably spent like 1,500 hours on Whereby, which is just like Zoom. And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Arthur. I think March, last time we did this, that's about the point where we all kind of pedal to the metal. Me and Gabe started, pushing each other to new heights of,
you can say competing.
Let's see how fast we can go while still mastering stuff. And just yanking Ben along. Like, Ben, come on, you want to be in Capstone with us? Like, hurry up. But yeah, we all made it there, and then everything that the guys are saying is true, and during Capstone too, I think we put in some really long days. We did everything together. Having that communication, having that base already there, went a long way towards just allowing us to focus on the technical stuff and also come up with the best ideas we could and drive each other to be better all the way through. So.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was great.
And that doesn't even actually account for the job hunt and the benefit of having this bond through the job hunt, because that is a stressful process. It can be long, it can be stressful. Even when it's going well, it's stressful. And so the ability to have somebody lean on and call and complain about something that went wrong, or get picked back up after you screwed up a technical interview, or ask questions, prep for an upcoming interview, anything like that. Just having that base of love there is huge for that process, because that's probably one of the I certainly don't want to scare people, but that's one of the more stressful things I've ever been a part of, is that job hunt.
I want to talk about job hunt, but before we do that, I just want to talk about Capstone for a sec first, because I think you hit upon some really good points. That Capstone really is a team-oriented, discussion-oriented experience. It's not just like read these books, because you need to talk about them. You need to be able to have that rigorous debate, but without sort of feeling like you're being attacked, right? How do you understand something? You've got to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to debate. This is how working engineers are going to interview you, right? And having, again, that trust is super important. This is also why we've actually started to introduce teams 1 month before Capstone starts now. So it was that we introduced teams, I think the first week of Capstone, but in order to help facilitate that team building, we're trying to introduce teams a month out. So
that's great.
A little bit of
that's a really good move.
And so, Capstone is just such a unique experience, because it's not mastery-based learning anymore. This is probably one of the biggest sort of transformations that people have to make in their minds, is that we're now moving into just-in-time learning. This is how learning feels at work.
Yes.
Right? You can't just take like months to learn something, whereas in core you could, and we want you to do that. But in Capstone, it's literally like every day we have a thing, and you have to be able to talk about it, feel it out, be okay with not fully understanding it. But that feeling out process, I do think that, again, without trust, you can't talk to people about. You're scared, to like say what you don't know. But when you have trust, you just say what you know, and somebody else will say what they know, and you kind of fill it out together. That's exactly what we want in Capstone. It's very discussion oriented, right? So that just-in-time learning ability is sort of hand in hand, works with sort of the ability to like have discussions about topics that you don't know.
Yeah, and I think to Capstone's credit, like being oriented the way it is, for those who haven't gone through it, it has some similarities to a university course, but I think it's less the teacher preaching to you at the front of the room and you furiously taking notes, and more engaging in your own sort of exploration of a lot of new concepts and a lot of new things. And so being able to do that as a team is obviously super helpful. You could do it on your own. It's better to do it with a team.
And it's also so humbling, right? Like engineering in general is so humbling. Like if you get to Capstone and you still have an ego, I don't know what to tell you. Like I'm pretty sure I can speak for all the guys here. We don't know anything, right? And so you get there, and Chris talks about being able to debate comfortably with each other. It's like, of course we can, because we know that none of us are too good for anything. Like we don't know anything. And so, it was all around great. And like Arthur said, I personally don't know if I could have received that level of education outside of Capstone, especially not in that time frame. It's just it's organized, and the material is just it's so nicely presented and curated. And so I would definitely recommend it to anybody who is serious about getting a job and becoming a really good engineer.
Biggest thing is that it's updated based on you. Like all three of you are working now. I'm going to talk about that in a bit after the job hunt. But all three of you are working now. Basically, Capstone gets requirements from you, right? You go out, you work, and you say, hey, look, I thought this was good. I thought these were some gaps. And then we try to plug the gaps in Capstone. So it's always updated. And Capstone is the bridge between core and sort of what we're seeing on the market, and especially our Capstone graduates, right? So the entire curriculum is sort of like backfilled, right? So this is not a curriculum that's designed sort of like in a vacuum. It's very much designed, based on feedback. But let's talk about the job hunt for a sec. So Ben touched on this a little bit, where having that tight knit group, the three of you were very comfortable with each other, helped a lot during Capstone. Going through it, you had a great project, Campion. Even now, I thought a lot of Capstone teams actually look at that project as inspiration for a project that's sort of like tightly scoped, but incredibly well built. The quality, right? The polish, just the depth, just incredible. So talk about the job hunt and how, especially related to sort of your U3, right? U3. How did have like a high trust group going through a job hunt help?
I think it'd be interesting to talk about each one of our personalities and how we each approach this. And it's Gabe here, by the way.
Yeah.
And
go, Gabe. You got to start this one off.
I could start this one off. Yeah. So I'm somebody who's very obsessive and who's like go mentality. And so I was dying to start the job hunt like 2 weeks before we had to, and I kept pinging Chris, like, Chris, check out my resume, check out my site, is it good to go? And he's like, oh no, let's wait until Wednesday or whatever. And I think Chris, you allowed me to start on a Monday or something. No, I think on a Friday, and we were supposed to start the following Monday.
Correct.
And I remember that by that Monday, I had already submitted like 150 applications, a cover letter for every single one of them, personalized, the whole shebang, right?
Yo, I wake up on Monday and I'm ready to start. And I'm like, Gabe, what's up? You getting started? He's like, I already did 150 over the weekend.
Gabe had an interview before I sent out an application.
This is the kind of person Gabe is.
Yes.
Let's understand this.
Yeah, and my mentality was like, I need to cast a really wide net. I need to apply for all these cool companies that I like and more. And it got to a point where that Monday came around, and I think I had like 4 or 5 interviews already lined up for Monday. Tuesday was like 5, Wednesday was like 5, Friday, and I was like, Jesus Christ. I was talking to the guys like, I don't think I can handle this. Like, if I knew that companies would actually get back to me, because I didn't think a lot of companies would get back to me, and they didn't, like just some of them, right? And yeah, it was just trying to get through all those interviews and trying to squeeze some time in for studying and just, yeah, the whole environment, it was also stressful, right? Because you're trying to look for a job to sustain your family, and you have all this in the back of your mind, and you're trying to perform during these interviews, during these coding challenges, systems design challenges, and just having Arthur and Ben there to just talk to throughout this entire process. It was incredible, because I'm somebody who, like I said, it has a go mentality, but I also knew that I don't think I could have lasted longer than a week. I mean, a month, if you will. Like, I don't think I would have been able to have gone through the job hunt if I was there like 2-3 months. Like, I don't know if I would have, how well I would have done there. So I was like, I need to make sure I give it everything I've got the first week or two, and try to get out of it right away, because I don't know if I could have handled it.
Yeah, so Gabe absolutely treated it like a 50-meter dash, which I think was great, because I think he killed it. And you didn't mention how long it took you to sign the offer, but you were out of the job market a couple weeks into the process, right?
Right. Yeah. It took 2 weeks for me to get everything signed and yeah, handled. So it worked out in the end. Thank God. Could have been earlier had I not had another company that was really interested, but then they gave me a fat no, which is great. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I'm my personality is a little bit more laid back than Gabe's, although throughout this entire process I've been pushed. Gabe has been pushing me because I'm a very competitive person naturally. So I think that's been the best thing in this team for me, has been having to compete with somebody like Gabe. I started at a little bit more leisurely rate, still tried to get a lot of applications out there. And yeah, I would say our project hit really well. There's a lot of employers just super impressed by it, couldn't believe what we were able to accomplish, especially with as little experience as we had, and some literally in disbelief, trying to question us, trying to figure out like how we could possibly do this or pull this off. And then I think for myself, so I was looking for jobs out of New York. Initially, I was only applying to New York companies. And what I found there was New York companies were really slow in getting back to me. So I think about 2 weeks in is when I started applying to remote companies, smaller startups, remote companies, and they were much faster. So that's where you could sort of see the greater demand there, at least to the point where I was applying. So I ended up signing with a remote company. Maybe about a month into the process, I had two great offers and chose one. Yeah, and then all the New York companies started really getting engaged and pouring in with their engagement. So that was interesting. But the same with Gabe. It felt great to get it off the market, to get off the market and sign. And I would say the whole process was I don't think I was so stressed out all the way through. I think I was treating it a little bit more leisurely. I wasn't trying to burn out, but I was happy to be done with it when we got to the end for sure.
And Arthur, what did your final numbers look like in terms of how long it took and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think I ended up maybe sending out about 400 applications. Got a bunch of engagements. Ended up with two offers, and I think it took about 4 to 5 weeks from the time I started till the acceptance.
And I also want to just throw this out there. I mean, all three of you ended up with six-figure offers, accepted six-figure offers. Sometimes when I read articles about like, hey, how I got a job in tech and this is what you should do, my first reaction is like, not to discount this, but like, what kind of job do you have? And then, because then I would know whether or not to listen to your advice, right? Like and again, nothing wrong with some sort of low-paying job. That's totally fine. But if you got a job that pays $50,000 a year, most people are launch codes, not everybody, but most people launch codes probably aiming higher or just a different place. And so they would probably want, you probably wouldn't want to listen to that advice, right? So just to sort of set the stage, I mean, all of you, six-figure jobs, good jobs at engineering-centric companies that value software engineers.
Yeah, I think from the beginning of the process, all three of us had agreed, we were at the same point where we said, any one of us would be happy with six figures. That was basically the number. Because I think for all three of us, six figures was a life-changing amount. And we all were above that. So we were good in the end.
Yeah. And sort of oddly enough to segue into the value of Capstone through that number, through those numbers. I remember having a discussion because I knew the guys wanted to do Capstone, were like sort of dead set on it. And I was a little bit up in the air about it. And I remember talking to you, Chris, about, what's the return like? And you said we're looking at about a 20 to 30,000 a year, for your first year starting salary bump, having gone through Capstone. And the monetary return absolutely is there. I mean, the proof is in the pudding in terms of that. The salary numbers for our cohort were awesome. But then Capstone's value to me is beyond those numbers, because you're going to have to do this job hunt anyway. You're going to have to go out, and if you want to get a job in this, you have to go on the hunt. And so you might as well do it armed to the teeth with all the knowledge you have, with all the team camaraderie that you have, with Chris in your corner, having data structures and algorithms in the bag, systems design questions in the bag, just a general lay of the land, having heard from other Capstone grads about what the job hunt is like, tips and tricks and what to look for in a job and stuff like that. Like, those intangibles are where the real value for Capstone came to me. And then
we have a new thing here where I think your cohort didn't have this, but we have Capstone mentors now. So
right.
There are people who finish Capstone. They're not just working engineers in the field. Like, I have a lot of friends in the field that's been in the industry for 15, 20 years. Whenever I talk to them about what we're doing, they remember how they've got into tech 20 years ago, and it just doesn't. The advice is not good. They're well-meaning, but they haven't been thinking about how to get into tech, right? And so our Capstone mentors are software engineers working in the field, but they also went through Capstone. And I think from that perspective, they know exactly what type of advice to give and where you're going and it's worked out really, really well. So we've done it 2 times so far, and it's been really good. So we'll definitely keep that going. But yeah, for your cohort, we didn't have that. We just kind of meet there. So I did want to talk about sort of the team, because that's sort of the unique thing about U3, right? So like, yeah, going through Capstone, sure, there's that was good, but like, what were some of the things, like someone's listening in core right now, what could they do right now to help build that strong team relationship, or just, yeah, that interpersonal relationship that you three had? I think it's gonna be hard to replicate, just because it's just like any relationship, is unique. But how do you three do it and last, kind of in core, through Capstone, through the job hunt, and even till now?
Something that Arthur and I did, so it's Gabe here. Something that Arthur and I did was we would just reach out to people, and Arthur was better than me at this, but we would just reach out to people at the start of our launch school career and just start talking to people, get together, try to pair program and whatnot. And by doing that, you get yourself out there, you get comfortable talking to others, and you're able to see who you mesh well with. And most of those are not going to work out. And a lot of people, not a lot, but a good amount of them are just, they're going to be unresponsive for whatever reason. And so, yeah, I think my advice there is just reach out. But in regards to Arthur and Ben, and why we work out so well, and how we knew this from the start, like, I met Ben and Arthur when we were in a TA session where Sergen was leading it. And the way they were talking to each other, like, I knew right away that if I was in a room with both of them, like, we'd get along perfectly. Like, it just, like, when you talk to somebody, you know right away if that's the kind of person that you mesh well with. And so I feel like that's life in general, where you reach out to people, you talk to people, and most are not going to work out. But when you come across your group of people, like, right away. And once you know right away, like, keep it moving. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I think what Gabe's touching on, and maybe we covered a little bit of this in the first podcast too, but I think obviously one reason why we work out so well, and why it's lasted this long, is because we genuinely like each other. And we built those personal relationships on top of the professional relationship, or maybe underneath the professional relationship, right? This wouldn't have worked or lasted if it was purely a professional relationship. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's even good advice going forward in your career too. It's to just genuinely see people as people, and not just see them as, what can you do for me, or what value can you bring to my career or my professional life, but yeah, just treat people like people. I think it'll go a long way.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is, of course, have conversations that are not just professional or scholarly, but have personal conversations. Get to know the other person, and because that's where and how the trust gets developed. But then the other big one that I wanted to add is celebrate the wins. I think at the time that we spoke in March, we had our wins of, like, which are very valid, of passing assessments and completing courses and stuff like that. But then when it came time to, like, I mean, we had a big old night-long drinking session to celebrate graduating core, then the same thing to celebrate Capstone being done, then the same to celebrate Campion being done. And then when I finally got my job and sort of closed that chapter out, our sort of pre-professional chapter out, we had another session. And then the beautiful in real life meeting that we eventually had later on. But celebrating the wins is a great way to add to that camaraderie and really strengthen that bond.
Yeah, I think it's my responsibility to provide more avenues for it, right? And so I can't force people to work together, but like study sessions is how you all first met. But we're doing seminars, which I think we might have started it after you finished core. I can't remember, but these seminars we're doing where we divided people into teams, and they're responsible for like a chapter to present on. That's another avenue. We have a lot of different study sessions, like peer-led study sessions. So that's always what I'm always on the lookout for. Like we have a little chess group going. You know, we have to build those avenues where people can collide. But this also goes to that question of like, you have to be willing to like participate, right? You have to be willing to give
Right.
a lot more.
Yep.
In a community like this, when you give, it's not just you giving X hours and like that's it. I think it's a really, really high chance that you give X hours and you get 2X back.
Right.
Easy.
You know, in sort of a community like launch schools where we just attract so many just really, really good students, right? Good people. So
that's what I was going to say, which is that I'm sure that there's more that launch school can do institutionally to support this kind of thing. But I also say, if you're a current student in launch school, you already know this. But the launch school community is one of the most beautiful and best communities on the internet. Like there are amazing people in that community. There's something about, the self-selection that happens when people choose to take the slow path and really master something. But these are smart, lovely, generous people. And so you absolutely should avail yourself of the community while you're going through it. And if you don't, you're missing out.
Yeah. We've also been incredibly impressed with sort of the communal generation that came out of our first podcast, study groups popping up. Was it the Women in Coding group popping up? There are like so many student-led opportunities to meet other students and find those people that you can form that 3-year foursome with to get you through the rest of the process. Do not go through your launch school career without at least participating in some of those.
I do get a question sometimes like, what is the minimum amount of commitment I can make in order to like finish core and, get a job? And while I think there is an answer for that for every individual person, I do think, it's missing out on, on the bigger benefit here, and same thing with work, right? Like if you do go to work, you're getting paid, but like, it would be weird to think like, what is the minimum amount of work I need to do to make sure I don't get fired or, continue to get my paycheck. And to me, it's all about growth, right? Growth in your career, setting yourself up. Why are you taking the slow path, right? If you wanted the fast path, go to the boot camp. It's totally fine. You can get a job in a boot camp. It's totally fine. All three of you, I fully believe you could have gotten jobs at boot camps if you had gone to a boot camp. But you're here. Why are you here? Because you actually wanted to, understand, and you wanted to start your careers at a different place. Right. In a different tier. So I think that there's so much value to be had in terms of, and reaching out, meeting people, and then, getting that 2X return back, 3X return back. So talk to me about you're working now, you've all been working for a couple months, not years, right? Are you able to talk about how work is going? Is it okay? Is it?
For sure. Yeah. Work has been great.
I think I get this question a lot. I'll just prime you for this. A lot of people are like, okay, cool, you got this project and you got into work. Now, are you able to hang on to your high-paying job? You got a great six-figure job, but can you hang on to it?
Right. Yeah. No, you spoke about this a lot during Capstone, Chris, where we put all this undue pressure on ourselves to prove our worth, and a lot of people don't think they're good enough. They have imposter syndrome. They think that once they get a job, they won't be able to keep up. And you always kept saying, like, guys, like the interviews are tough, but once you start like the day-to-day stuff, it's not hard. Like you guys can do it. Like if you've gone through core and Capstone, you could do the job that you sign up for. Like there's absolutely no doubt about that. And personally, like it's been great. Launch school has equipped me with the ability and the hunger to learn, to put myself out there. Chris talks about just-in-time learning. My entire 6 months so far has been just-in-time learning. I've learned all kinds of different technologies, languages, libraries, frameworks, you name it. I've learned so many things. And I remember listening to the podcast early on in my launch school career and thinking, God, it's so scary having to learn Go and Docker and all this stuff in a couple of days and try to, cram it in there and create some sort of output for your company. And after Capstone, like it's not a problem. Like that's what I do. I just solve problems and I learn stuff, and it's a blast. It's really really fun.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thriving at my job. They love me. They love the work I do. They my boss appreciates how little he has to. Let me rephrase. When I need to get my boss involved, it's because I need to get my boss involved, not because this is you should have been able to look this up in documentation. Like, this is in the docs. Why didn't you find that? That doesn't happen with me, and that's because Launch School taught me. Like, one of the first chapters in Launch School is, here's how you read the Ruby docs. I would drop that. Actually, I would drop that in job interviews, and you could see the nods of approval on the interviewer's face when they were like, "What did Launch School teach you?" I'm like, "Well, one of the first chapters is how to read documentation." Like, "Oh, thank you," because there's you add value in saving your manager time. I'm being trusted with larger and larger projects. I'm about to contribute to an open source, actually a circuit breaker, contribute to an open source circuit breaker that will then allow our job to hire in a new space. So I'm contributing in incredibly outsized ways for a 2-month in developer.
Yeah, I feel like I'm echoing the same thing here, but absolutely, job is easier than the interviews. Job is easier than definitely Capstone and probably most of Launch School. It feels really silly sometimes, even though I love my job. I love the benefits. I love everything about it. I'm working in a technical stack that's Flask, which is a Python framework. I do a lot of work in Vue on the front end. Every once in a while, I touch more backend stuff like Snowflake, Airflow for DAGs. And all of this is stuff that was not covered in Capstone at all, right? And yet the hard problems that we solved in Capstone building this project gave me every confidence in the world to be able to go in and say, yeah, I can absolutely work in this stack. I can absolutely contribute, maybe not from day one, but definitely from week 2 or 3. And yeah, I think that's, Ben was talking about the value of Capstone earlier on. I just add on to that. It's that, right? Could we have gone through boot camp and been able to do this job? Probably. But to have something like Campion under our belts, to know that we solved a technical problem like that, it really changes the way that you relate to a lot of these things. We have this confidence to know that, yeah, I feel like I have this confidence that I know that I can handle whatever problem it is, even if it's in a domain or a space that I don't know anything about. I'll take my time and I'll figure it out. It's no problem.
Yeah, this is so interesting because Python, Flask, Vue, definitely not Snowflake, right? Like, none of the stuff is covered in Core or Capstone. None of it, right? And it reminds me of this discussion that we had a while back about how come employers aren't hiring me. They have to give me a chance to learn. How could I learn? How can I know this stuff if employers don't give me a chance to learn? Right? That's the complaint. It's not that employers don't give you a chance to learn. It's that we're talking about different types of learning. Mastery-based learning of fundamentals versus just-in-time learning of tools. Employers absolutely want to give you a chance to learn, but the latter type of learning, the just-in-time learning of tools and tooling and frameworks and libraries, that's cool. But you have to come already mastered of fundamentals. Only then can you then go learn, Flask. I don't know Python, let alone a framework, right? Of Python framework. How is that possible? That seems 2 steps away. It's not. If you've already mastered the fundamentals of APIs and web development in any language, right? So I think it's exactly that type of thing where you have to separate the 2 types of learning demands, and you yourself have to put on mastery-based learning on fundamentals. And then when you go to a job, you can go to any of these like engineering-centric jobs and learn on the job. You don't have to come in fully formed. That's not what employers are asking. Okay, good. So all of you are doing great at work, which sounds, I'm not surprised, but happy to hear nonetheless. So there was a meeting, a physical meeting, post-pandemic physical meeting, first time meeting together. Anybody want to give us a summary of that? You guys put a nice little picture, I think, in our Slack.
That it was a dream come true. It was magic. Gabe's a lot taller than I thought he would be. Arthur's got a lot more swag in his step than I ever thought he would, because he doesn't walk around when he's in front of his computer.
And I'm more muscular too, right?
Well,
how tall is Gabe?
We just gonna pause on that
one. It was fantastic. I don't know. It's my first time. I'm a little bit older than both these guys. It was my first time ever meeting an online friend in real life. So that was definitely a little bit odd for me, but it was just a blast. What did we do? We walked around Prospect Park. I went, the beauty of working remotely is I held a meet. Actually, I think all three of us held a meeting in the morning,
right?
With our respective companies. So
we all three have remote work. So we did some just working together, for old time's sake. We've done a lot of work together in the past, and it was kind of cool, all three of us working together in the same space, but now working for separate companies.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And so it's funny. I have a friend who runs a company, and it's a remote company, and he tells me that when sometimes they have a company-wide retreat, he'll end up like firing people because in person they end up being very different than they are online. I guess this wasn't the case here. It was as advertised.
It was absolutely awesome. Like I remember, because I was in Boston. Like it was just so meant to be, right, guys? Like I was in Boston because I had to see a doctor, and Arthur lives in New York, and Ben was somehow like he ended up in Manhattan or something, right? For a couple for that week, right, Ben?
Yep.
And so like the Monday, so we met on a Tuesday. Monday night, like the guys were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be there," and I was like, "Oh great, I'm gonna book some Amtrak tickets. I'll book a hotel, and I'll be there for 3 days." And that's what happened. I went there. We all met each other, but I went there. I arrived, and both of them were waiting for me at Penn Station. I was supposed to come out on the terminal where it's like brand new. It looks nice. I came out on the wrong terminal, so I'm over there frantically waiting and hoping that they come pick me up. Next thing I know, I see these two huge guys just rushing towards me, a group hug. It was incredible all around. And
like, were you nervous at all? Like, oh my gosh, meeting, as Ben says, online friend.
A little bit. I was like, oh, I hope these guys are not. I know they're weird, but I hope they're not super weird in real life. But no, it was awesome. Like right away, it was great all around. We had so much fun. We went out. We, like Ben said, we went to the park. We worked together. I beat Arthur at Mario Kart several times. I mean, it was just great all around. So
yeah, and you wrote a great article, Gabe, called "Programming Gave Me My Best Friends," which is on the Launch School Medium publication now. That really captured it. And just seeing your pictures, I just thought like there was so much happiness. I was just like, I want to bottle that up, I want to bottle that up somehow. But yeah, that is just so amazing for me to see. And, we talk about culture. What is the culture of Launch School? I think for me, the default was like kind of like a seriousness, studiousness, just because for me, I feel like I have an obligation to you all. And if you're going to trust me, I don't want you to crash and burn on a job market, right? So for me, there's like this like seriousness. But I think what you've brought is a happiness, right? Like you can work hard, make six figures, and still like be happy, which I think is an important attribute to also bring in here a little bit, right? It doesn't just have to be a grinding experience the whole time. So
absolutely, like and that's why I pointed out that the freedom afforded to us by all working remotely, where this sort of culmination of 2 years of hard work in Launch School has made us inseparable, kind of war bonded buddies for life, right? Like going through this really hard thing together, I think forged some really strong bonds. And yes, on the other hand, it's not like we're at the end now. We're like, oh yeah, this is sad. Like we're still, we're still celebrating, we're still enjoying, and we're just happy to go into this next chapter now. And we're still friends.
Yeah. And this next chapter is going to be exciting. I think that once you kind of get into that other side, the other side of the tech where you're not fearful all the time, where you're fearful of change, fearful of being laid off, fearful of GitHub Copilot, you're not working out of fear all the time, but out of excitement and out of possibility and out of, wow, I can do this and I can do it, out of like things unlocking, feels like doors unlocking. This is what makes tech, I think, amazing. You got to get on that side. Once you're on that side, it's not just the money. Yeah, the money's good, of course, but if you came for the money, you got to stay for that enthusiasm of sort of that freedom that tech gives you of navigating your career intentionally, right? And that's how you're going to thrive. But super looking forward to how you three progress. I know you just started in your job, 6 months, 2 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. But yeah, I mean, any other thoughts you want to share with sort of the Launch School community? This podcast is for Launch School people, so prospective, core, current Capstone, or even graduates.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing in regards to what you just spoke about, fear, Chris. The boys and I talk about this all the time, like just not operating from this fearful mindset. Like in meetings, we're comfortable bringing up our own perspectives and our own ideas, and not being scared that, oh my God, if I say the wrong thing, they're going to fire me. Well, if they fire me, exactly, yeah. And if they fire me, like I can get a job in a couple of weeks. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And that feeling is so liberating. It's incredible. It is one of the best feelings you can have. And so many other industries that's just not possible, right? And I'm genuinely so grateful to have found Launch School and be able to just walk around confidently. Yeah. And another thing that I'd like to say is, and that I didn't have a chance to bring up earlier, Wendy, who's somebody who graduated Launch School a couple of years ago. You brought her during our Capstone cohort once to talk to us, and she told us that like none of us were special enough to not get a job. And when she said that, like during Capstone, that was all that needed to be said. Like all three of us, like we knew from that moment on, like it was smooth sailing. Like we're gonna get a job. We're not special, and it's so funny because there was every single kind of personality you can think of in our cohort. We had like 15 different people, and every single person got an incredible job. And so like, if you're going through core or Capstone right now, like you're not special enough to not get a job. Like everybody is going to get a job. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for what you've built, Chris. And thank you so much.
Core is the magic, right? Like as Arthur said, like your job probably is going to require 80-90% of core skills, right? So I don't want people to think that like, oh, I got to do Capstone. You don't have to Capstone. I want you to probably, but you don't have to, right? The assessments in core, the way we've structured things from the beginning is going to be valuable. So yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, any advice? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say too, like I got a lot of gratitude in my heart for Launch School and for this community. There's just been really incredible people that have supported me, and just talked to me all the way through, and it really is something, this community. And I'll say that if you're in Launch School now, if you're in core now, just keep going. It's worth it. There were definitely points where I thought, man, I could just do a boot camp. It'd be easier, it'd be quicker. But I think what you're hearing from all of us today is the ability to walk into a job and know that we have multiple years of experience working through the fundamentals, doing this stuff. And to me, that gives me just this confidence that, I know imposter syndrome is a real thing. I don't feel that in this job. I don't feel as though I don't deserve to be here. I feel as though I know what I'm doing and I'm confident in my contributions to the company. And a huge part of that is just having gone through launch school and, ended up building a project like Campion, and so having that sort of in my back pocket gives me confidence going forward. So if you're doubting the process, just keep going. And yeah, definitely find somebody to study with. Those people could support you too. But I think I think it's worth it in the end, is what you're hearing here.
Yeah, you sorry, you really can't overstate the value that confidence brings and offers you in your professional world. I mean, imposter syndrome, that is real. I absolutely struggled with that during the job hunt in my very first days onboarding. I took my first ticket. I would take my first ticket. And I'm wondering, like, do I have this in me? Like, every time I ask for help, am I asking for too much help and all of that? But like, very quickly proved to myself that worked out really well. And just the other day, a family friend that I hadn't seen for a long time, we saw each other, and she was like, "Man, it's really lucky it all worked out for you." And I'm like, there was no luck involved in any of this. I found a community of success-minded, goal-oriented people, and I was success-minded and I was goal-oriented. And Capstone promised me this, or Launch School promised me this knowledge base. Capstone promised me this kind of job, and with 100% success rate, it's delivered on that. And so it didn't feel like any kind of luck. It didn't feel like I just sort of, that statement just felt weird. It was like, there was no luck in this. Like, this is what they said would happen. And it happened.
Facts.
Right.
Facts.
I always tell people, I'm like, look, you could be the first person who doesn't get a job out of Capstone. Look, I can't tell the future. I can only tell you the past, right? So I can tell you what we've had in the past, but like, if it doesn't work out for you, I'll update the numbers for the future. Knowing the market and knowing how, like, if we're even having that conversation, that means you've probably done okay in core, right? As long as you didn't misrepresent yourself to us at Launch School, right? You didn't like cheat on assessments or anything. Yeah, I mean, we have data about you, right? So I always try to look at data. I have data about individuals over a long period of time. I have data about the market, right? And historical data about how that mapping process worked. So roughly speaking, right? Yeah, the market could take a totally different turn for sure. And that'd be out of my control, right? That'd be out of your control too. But yeah, I think what we're doing here is definitely very like data driven, and it's about, walking people through this path. And frankly, 2 years of working through Launch School, my opinion, all right, is that it is probably more valuable than 2 years working at some random company, because working somewhere, you're not like systematically hitting all your gaps, right? It just happens to be whatever you're working on. This project exposed you to this, that project exposed you to that. It's very, happenstance. Whereas when you're working through a curriculum, it is about addressing what you don't know, especially a master-based one, right? Like you go quick if you know something, right? If you're awesome at SQL or something, or databases, go through that database course super quick. Next course you don't know anything about, you stay there for a while, for 2-3 months. And so this, if you continue to do that for like 2 years, you're just always addressing your gaps. That's got to be good for you, right? If you're interested in this as a career. So, but okay, I actually didn't want to make this talk all about like how awesome Launch School is. I actually wanted to talk about how awesome you three are, or how I just want to maybe ask one last question. It's like going through this whole journey together now. You're, from beginning of core and now getting jobs and working and meeting. This is a tough question. All right. So like, what did you learn about friendship and teamwork?
I mean, I learned that you can't do anything by yourself, right? I mean, maybe some people can, but I'm bad at it. And so, yeah, I asked for help early in this process. I know some people are joining, Launch School or maybe other programs, and they have like family or friends that are also doing it, also supporting. I think that's valuable, right? For me, I thought this was something I wanted to do, but I've told these guys many times, I don't think I would ever made it through core without them. And so, I'm just being honest about that. In the prep materials for launch school, we read a book called Mastery. Talks about different styles of learning, right? I kind of, self-identified really quickly as the dabbler, right? Like I'm somebody that likes to dabble in a lot of different stuff, but has a hard time committing to something. And for me, getting social buy-in, getting support from other people is the way that I'm gonna finish something. And so having these guys was absolutely essential for that. And so yeah, I couldn't have done it on my own, but I'm standing here because of these guys.
I grew tremendously as a person because of these guys. I had more bluntly honest conversations with them in a disagreeing fashion than I think I have had with maybe anybody else, possibly in my life. I mean, how many times did I slack you after we hung up? Like, yo, did I cross the line back then? Like when I said this and this, like, are we still cool? And you were like, I didn't even think anything of it. Like, but that was hard for me. Taking stances like that was not something that I was good at or am good at doing.
Yeah, it got real. We never avoided conflict.
No, yes, that and back to that other question about how did this team succeed? We absolutely did not shy away from conflict. It was always respectful and it was always constructive. But it was, if there was something that needed to be laid bare, we laid that bare. I mean, we even had in cohort, we had a week where we sort of went a little bit off the rails, and we had to sit down that Monday, and it was like, we went off the rails last week. Why did that happen, and how do we keep that from happening again? I developed personally tremendously because of these two guys and the space that they gave me to grow. So I'm just so thankful for that, and I will take the memory of that night in at La Crocodile with me to the grave. That was just such a beautiful memory with these guys meeting for the first time.
And for those of you who don't know what that means, is we went crocodile hunting in the swamps of I'm kidding.
The swamps of the Hudson River.
No, that was a restaurant that we ate at.
In Ben's previous life, he was a sommelier, so he taught me and Gabe how to live. So that was one thing we did in Brooklyn. Yeah, and just to add on to what the guy said, so I'm the youngest of the group, and I thank God I'm self-aware enough to know that, like, I don't know anything in life, and I'm just so, like, there's just so many areas that I need to grow in. And just hanging around with them and just being real and personal with both of them, like, I just became so much more humble. I was taught to stop and smell the roses. I'm somebody who just has to go through walls all the time. Like, I constantly have to shatter my own personal records. And I never used to stop and, like, think about my achievements or, oh my God, it took me 1,500 hours to go through core. Like, I would never stop and think about those things. Like, to me, that's never enough. Like, I always have to do more. It's not enough. And just, being able to reminisce on our accomplishments and just being vulnerable. Like I said, like, my personality is type A. Like, I have to be leading. I have to be, pushing the envelope. And these guys just taught me to take a seat, just be vulnerable, share what I'm going through. I'm not trying to just beat everybody at everything, because you're not going to get anywhere, right? It's like that saying where I don't know who said this, but, like, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I learned that, like, in a real deep level. I really genuinely learned that through this experience, and I'm eternally grateful to launch school and my boys.
I love that phrase. I think this is why people come to launch school, isn't it? I mean, they can learn stuff on their own, right? And they can go much faster without assessments, without guidance. But yeah, if you want to go as far as you possibly can, launch school can be that. But then within launch school here, you have a lot of like-minded people, and And I see a lot of profiles of people, and there are a lot of patterns. There are a lot of people that are similar, and no matter how unique it feels, right? I get a lot of questions like, "Hey, this is my situation. What do you think? Can I do it?" I'm like, I see tons of people like this at launch school. Of course you can do it, right? If you want to. So yeah, and I think for me, the lesson I learned is have to build more opportunities for people to discover each other, right? And also having like this podcast to show that, like, yeah, there's something positive here. You can get more than you put in. Don't think about it just like, oh, well, I got to put in more time to this, like as a job or something. It's not like that, right? It's about deriving multiple times more back in the future, in the long run. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about that I didn't ask, or any last remarks or comments?
I just wanted to say that Surgeon is not as scary as he seems. You're probably ready to take the assessment, so take it and get it over with.
Okay, that's the last statement. We're gonna.
That's how we want to close it.
All right.
It's scene.
Hit us up on Slack if you have any questions. We are pretty friendly people. We don't bite.
That's nice. Yeah, that's nice. This is another thing I find amazing is like, where else can you find a learn to code community where all these like working engineers are hanging out? Like, where else?
Mm-hmm.
And
For
they
sure.
walk the same path you're walking. That's incredible, right? So yeah, thanks for making yourselves available. All right, we'll call it a day. Thanks, guys. Stay in touch, and yeah, have a good day. Thanks for coming on again.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you,
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, guys.